Before we start, take a moment to like and subscribe. For 400 long years, the people of Israel had toiled under the oppressive rule of the Egyptian pharaohs. They were not just laborers. They were chattel, their lives defined by endless backbreaking work, building monumental cities and temples for their ruthless masters. Their cries reached the heavens, and in response, a man named Moses was called by God to be their liberator. Though he had been raised in Pharaoh's own opulent palace, Moses now stood before the most powerful man on earth with his brother, Aaron, delivering a stark and simple message: "Let my people go." Pharaoh, a man who saw himself as a living god, merely laughed. He had no intention of releasing his massive workforce, which was the very foundation of his empire's wealth and might. And so, with a firm resolve, Moses and Aaron prepared to unleash a series of divine judgments upon the land of Egypt. The first plague began at the very heart of Egyptian life, the Nile River. Early one morning, as Pharaoh went to the river, Aaron held his staff aloft over the water. As his hand descended, the river, which had flowed so brown and clean, instantly turned to a deep, visceral blood. The water became a thick, putrid mess. The fish, the sacred symbols of life, died instantly and floated to the surface, their scales reflecting the morbid hue. A terrible stench filled the air, a mix of death and decay, making the river's banks unbearable to approach. The Egyptians, whose lives depended entirely on the Nile, found themselves without a source of clean water. They desperately dug wells along the river, but even that water seemed tainted. Pharaoh's own magicians were able to mimic the trick, but their feeble efforts offered no relief. Stubborn and unyielding, Pharaoh's heart remained hardened. 7 days later, the second plague arrived. The Nile, still a foul, red current, suddenly began to teem with life, but not the kind the Egyptians were used to. Millions upon millions of frogs leaped from the water, covering every inch of the land. They were everywhere in the houses, the bedrooms, the kneading bowls, and even the beds of the pharaoh and his officials. The constant wet-hopping sound was maddening, and their cold, slimy bodies were an inescapable torment. The magicians could also create frogs, but they could not remove them. Finally, overwhelmed by the chaos, Pharaoh begged Moses to intercede. When the frogs died, their bodies were piled high, creating a second, even more horrific stench. Yet, as soon as the land was clear, Pharaoh reneged on his promise. Next came the third plague. Aaron struck the dust on the ground, and a swarm of tiny, biting gnats covered the entire country, from person to animal. They were so numerous and so small that they were impossible to escape. The magicians tried to copy this one, but they failed completely. Humbled, they told Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God," but he still hardened his heart. Then, a new wave of torment began with the fourth plague, a dense swarm of flies. These were not simple houseflies, but thick, buzzing clouds of insects that filled every home and consumed every surface. The homes of the Egyptians were filled with them, a constant, irritating torment. However, in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, not a single fly appeared. This was the first time God made a clear, visible distinction between the Egyptians and his chosen people. The land of Goshen remained an island of peace amidst the swarming pestilence. The fifth plague struck at Egypt's wealth and sustenance. A terrible disease, a sudden and devastating pestilence, fell upon all of Egypt's livestock. The horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, and sheep in every field suddenly and without warning fell dead. The plague was swift and absolute, an economic and spiritual blow to a nation that revered its animals. But again, a stark and miraculous contrast was made. Not a single animal belonging to the Israelites was harmed. Pharaoh had spies sent to Goshen, and when they confirmed this amazing fact, his heart only grew harder. Next, Moses and Aaron took handfuls of soot from a furnace, a symbolic act of taking the very dust of Egypt's bondage and turning it into a judgment. As they tossed the soot into the air, it became a fine, pervasive dust that settled on every living thing. It caused painful, oozing boils on every Egyptian, from the lowliest servant to the highest official. This was a direct physical torment. The magicians who had tried so hard to stand against Moses could not even face him because they were covered in their own painful, festering sores. Still, in his stubbornness, Pharaoh would not give in. Then the heavens themselves turned against Egypt. Moses stretched his hand toward the sky, and an immense roaring hailstorm descended upon the land. Unlike any storm Egypt had ever experienced, this hail was a terrifying mixture of massive ice balls and fire, which sizzled and crackled as it struck the earth. It shattered trees, destroyed the remaining crops in the fields, and killed both people and animals who were caught outside. The storm was an unnatural horror, a testament to God's power over the elements. Yet, once more, in the land of Goshen, where the Israelites lived, not a single drop of rain fell. The sun shone as if nothing was wrong. The 8th plague was a swarm of locusts. After the hail had destroyed everything, a dark, immense cloud of locusts appeared on the horizon. The sun was blotted out as they descended, their numbers so vast they covered every inch of the land. The sound of their eating was a continuous, horrifying sound. They ate every single plant the hail had left behind, devouring every remaining leaf, blade of grass, and fruit. When they were gone, the land was left completely barren, a desolate wasteland where not a single green thing remained. The 9th plague was a chilling 3-day darkness. For 72 hours, a thick, palpable darkness covered the entire land of Egypt. It was a physical, oppressive darkness that could be felt and touched. The people could not see one another, and for 3 days, no one moved from their place. All activity ceased. It was as if time had stopped for the Egyptians, a chilling silence in a world without light. But in Goshen, the Israelites had light in their homes. It was a final, unsettling warning. After all these plagues, Pharaoh was still defiant. He had endured every torment, his pride a shield against even the most direct threats to his power. He had sworn to Moses that if he ever saw his face again, he would die. So Moses delivered the final, most horrifying message. At midnight, every firstborn in Egypt, from the son of Pharaoh to the son of the lowest servant, would die. God gave the Israelites a final, urgent instruction. They were to take a lamb, a sacrificial animal, and kill it. Then take its blood and smear it on their doorposts. It was a physical symbol of their obedience and a mark of their salvation. God promised that an angel of the Lord would pass through the land, and in any house marked with the blood, the firstborn would be passed over. This act became known as the Passover. As the Israelites followed the instructions, a palpable tension hung in the air. They knew what was coming, but their Egyptian neighbors did not. At the stroke of midnight, a great agonizing cry went up throughout Egypt. It began in the palace, a single piercing wail, and spread like a wildfire across the land. It was not a cry of fear, but of profound, gut-wrenching grief. There was not a single Egyptian house without a death. Pharaoh's own son, the heir to his throne, was among the dead. The sound was a symphony of despair that finally broke Pharaoh's arrogance. His heart, so long hardened, was now crushed. He had lost the one thing he valued most, his successor, his legacy. In the dead of night, broken and defeated, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and cried out, "Get out! You and all the Israelites. Go worship your God and take everything with you." The Egyptians, terrified and desperate, urged the Israelites to leave quickly, showering them with gifts of silver, gold, and clothing, eager for them to just be gone. The Israelites did not hesitate. They walked out of Egypt that very night, free people after generations of bondage. The final terrible plague had not just killed, but had shattered the very heart of Egyptian power, proving once and for all that God's will would not be denied.